Bother you, but I just had to come over here because you look like my favorite actor. Are you Richard Gere?
Gee, but hey, have a seat.
So you?
Have a seat.
Whoopi Goldberg plays an undercover detective with a mission to find the dealers of a deadly brand of cocaine known as Fatal Beauty. And that's in one of 4 new movies we'll review this week here on Siskel and Ebert. Also on our video segment, a look at some classic rock and roll. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Well, here comes my standard Whoopi Goldberg movie review. Previous versions were for Jumpin' Jack Flash and Burglar, in which the point was made that Hollywood is taking this talented actress and using her like a wind-up toy to walk her through endless action sequences. In Fatal Beauty, Whoopi Goldberg plays a narcotics detective who is always going undercover to make a bust, as in this scene where a pimp tries to pick her up.
You have got a future in this town, and I can feel it in my bones.
Stop that now. No, you don't want to go. Stop
This
that
is
now.
your lucky night.
No,
I am going to open up a hole.
You're going to open up something you don't want to know about.
What
Now
is that?
Stop. Oh, rad.
That.
That's rad.
Rad.
Mm-hmm. Conrad. Under arrest.
Looking for bigger fish to catch, Whoopi worms her way into the house of a high society lady who has an absurd, very casual attitude about her son's involvement with cocaine, and she has a hostile attitude toward cops.
You have the right to remain silent. You. Ow!
That's not very original, and that's true of most of this movie, save for a potentially interesting relationship between Goldberg and Sam Elliott, playing the head of security for a drug kingpin. He's assigned to follow her, but it's not easy.
I gotta go.
Well, I'm going with you, lady. You made it out of me once before, and you're not going to do it again.
Really? Have a good evening.
Yes, that's exactly what I want to see Whoopi Goldberg do, shoot tires in a movie. They have one decent scene together where Whoopi Goldberg finally tells him why she has such a passion for catching dope dealers, and that's a very good scene. You know what's so good about the scene? Whoopi Goldberg simply talks, and when she is allowed to talk, she can be a very compelling actress, as we know from The Color Purple. But she spends a lot of Fatal Beauty screaming and shooting at drug dealers. Too bad, another missed opportunity for the talented Whoopi Goldberg.
You're right about that scene. It's a great scene. It really moved me. But I like the movie better than you did, too. I think it's the best of the action pictures she's made. I thought there was a very strong relationship between her and Sam Elliott. I also thought there was a very strong motivating force in why she was going after these drug dealers. And another thing I thought was that this movie is the real Beverly Hills Cop Part 2. This is the kind of movie that Eddie Murphy should have been making instead of the way over-the-top action and violent movie that he made. This movie has a lot more human nature in it.
You've compared this film now to some bad films, other Whoopi Goldberg films, to Beverly Hills Cop 2, another bad film. If you're saying it's better than that, that's not saying a whole lot. I still think we have yet to see Whoopi Goldberg do the kind of quality film, save for Color Purple, that I think we both know that she's capable of.
I have a feeling that if she were going to wait around for another role like The Color Purple, she probably wouldn't have made a movie since The Color Purple. I think she's working as an actress. She's better in this film than she was before, and I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed it as an action picture. I'll defend it on that basis.
No, not me. I just didn't care for the film.
Did you like it better than Beverly Hills Cop?
Well, I already said I did. That's not a big compliment. I also liked it better than Amazon Women on the Moon.
Case closed.
What case? Some briefcase.
It's not as bad.
Keep going, big guy.
As you're trying to give the impression that it is.
Keep going.
Our next movie is named The Hidden, and this is an offbeat science fiction thriller that I frankly didn't expect would amount to very much, but it surprised me. It's a sleeper, a sort of a cross between Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Terminator, and it stars Michael Nouri as a cop on the trail of a madman who has committed a string of violent and senseless crimes. He looks like an ordinary criminal, but he doesn't act like one. There's something weird about him, and ordinary bullets just don't seem to stop him. Kyle MacLachlan, who was the star of Blue Velvet, turns up here as an FBI agent from out of town, but he almost seems to be as weird as the killer.
You mind me asking how much one of these costs?
No.
How much?
I don't know.
You don't know. What'd you do, steal it?
Yeah.
One suspect leads to another, and before long, the two lawmen are on the trail of a stripper. And the man from out of town reveals that he's from way out of town.
I want answers, and I want them now.
Miller, stripper, DeVries were the same. And it's not human.
Excuse me?
I've been after it for a long time. Now it's here, on Earth, in your city.
Oh, boy. Are we talking spacemen here?
That's right, he's seeking vengeance from another planet. The basic premise of The Hidden is sort of like the Terminator. A deadly killer has arrived here on Earth, and he's pursued by a character who seeks revenge. The movie takes this story and tells it like a police procedural with a certain amount of quiet, tongue-in-cheek humor as the alien learns the ways of big city cops. The story's interesting, the characters are offbeat and well acted, and I ended up by being surprised by how much I enjoyed The Hidden.
And I did too. I was delighted because, first of all, I had sort of said on this show a couple of months ago that I was tired of slimy creatures and glop being thrown at people. Well, there's a very slimy creature in this film.
Yes, and lots of glop.
Yeah, and it's handled in a scene that's really gross in the first instance that we see it. And even the way it was handled, even the gloppy scene, if you will, was handled well. I sat there, I watched, I was not grossed out, and then I was enthralled. This Kyle MacLachlan from Blue Velvet is an absolute discovery. He's a wonderful actor. Michael Nouri, who I thought was so inappropriate for Flashdance, I couldn't believe him as a boyfriend, is credible as the cop. This is a very well-written film, very well directed. Congratulations all around.
The Kyle MacLachlan performance reminded me a little bit of Jeff Bridges in Starman. They both have the same role, which is an alien from outer space inhabiting a human body and not being completely comfortable with it.
And can't let us know that right away.
And can't let us know that. Now, he takes a different approach than Starman did, but it's also an interesting approach, and it was a surprisingly good movie.
Very good.
Coming up next from the Oscar-winning director of Gandhi, the story of another crusader for human rights in a movie called Cry Freedom.
We demand confrontation.
Isn't that a demand for violence?
Well, you and I are now in confrontation, but I see no violence.
Our next film is called Cry Freedom, and it's based on the true story of a nation in turmoil, South Africa, and two brave men, one black, one white, trying to rescue it. Cry Freedom, by director Richard Attenborough, did Gandhi, is the story of Steve Biko, a young black man trying to lead a crusade on behalf of the 25 million black South Africans whose freedom was and is still curtailed by the only 5 million white minority. The story is set in the 1970s, and in the beginning, Steve Biko has to convince a liberal white editor that his cause is just.
The place is full of drunks, thuggery, people so desperate for anything they'll beat a kid bloody if they thought he had 5 rands.
Was that kid you a few years ago?
Yeah. Maybe more scared.
Of course, the film stresses the violence that black South Africans are subjected to, and when the editor, played by Kevin Kline, keeps on meeting with Steve Biko, his life and that of his family is endangered. They're going to have to leave the country. He wants to write a book about what he has seen, and his wife objects.
Because you want a book published, you're going to rip the kids from their schools, their grandparents, their whole life. Don't you even bother to find out what I'd like to do. We may hate the bastards that run this country, but this is still our home.
She will, of course, change her mind. Now, one of the most powerful moments in the film is when she and her husband attend Steve Biko's funeral after he's been beaten to death in his jail cell.
We are here to mourn one of the great men of Africa.
Now, what's fresh about this movie is that you might expect that would be the ending of the film, and then would be the credits and some kind of tribute to Steve Biko. But that's not true. That funeral occurs only 1 hour into this 2.5-hour movie, which then goes on to tell the story of how the editor and his family try to escape and tell the story of both Steve Biko and of racism in South Africa. Sure, it's a noble cause, but it's also a solid adventure, so we get the message in an effective way in a movie. In some ways, the film that Cry Freedom most resembles is The Killing Field. That is mixing journalism and terrorism. It's not as good as that film, but of course that was a great film. But it's good enough, and its images do remain in the mind. Kevin Kline, I think, is very effective as the editor, and Denzel Washington is also quite good, choosing wisely, I think, to underplay his role as Steve Biko. I admire this film very much.
You have chosen to admire the very thing that makes this film dishonest, and that is the fact that it's not really about South Africa. The funeral is after the first hour. This is not a movie about blacks, and it's not told from the point of view of blacks. Maybe you should say it shouldn't be. But the fact is, just as a small minority of whites rule an entire nation of blacks in South Africa, so a few white characters in this movie dominate all of the black characters. The white editor goes to a shebang and sees everybody dancing and drinking, so he gets to learn about black culture. Then Steve Biko dies, and the last 90 minutes of this movie is a rerun of The Trap Family, or one of those other movies where some brave family tries to escape from some totalitarian regime. It's just a thriller. It doesn't have to be South Africa. This could be those people that went up in the hot air balloon and escaped from East Germany. It has nothing to do with the story of Steve Biko or the story of South Africa. It's just these yuppies that are going to get the freedom so he can publish his book.
Roger, do you not think that while those people are on their journey, that you are thinking about Steve Biko? Because I certainly was. And I'll tell you something else. You're tossing away the first hour of the film. I think that section is about Steve Biko. That's number two. Number three, if you're telling me that this film is not a hard-hitting documentary about Steve Biko or a hard-hitting documentary about South Africa,
it's not.
Then
not.
That I agree with you.
It's not.
But if you're saying that this isn't an effective film about the conditions in South Africa and one man's head being turned around about it, then I think you're wrong.
Well, I'll agree with you, Gene, that this film will do good.
No, I said it's noble and easy.
It's noble and it's easy. It's not hard-hitting, and it doesn't tell it what it's really like for black people in South Africa or for white people in South Africa. It's sugar-coated melodrama, and we get to applaud because there he is going across the bridge to freedom. Big deal. I mean, this has nothing to do with the real political situation in South Africa. It's just, as I said before, a yuppie melodrama.
No, I think you're being much too hard on the film.
Okay, when we come back, Marcello Mastroianni stars in a love story that's a real heartbreaker, and we also look at the big boom in classic rock and roll, including some early classic Buddy Holly.
Right after high school you started playing together?
Yes, sir, that's right.
Our next movie is named Dark Eyes, and this is a classic story of love and loss, the story of a man who loves one woman but stays with another, making tragedies out of all of their lives. The movie stars Marcello Mastroianni in a big romantic performance as an Italian who has spent years in a comfortable marriage with a woman that he doesn't love. Then one day he visits a spa and meets a Russian woman, a woman that he falls in love with at first sight. And here he gallantly retrieves her hat. He comes up with a pretense to visit her home in Russia, where he's greeted by the local population as a visiting celebrity. And once again, it's clear that this is true love. Their love story is told magnificently, but it's told sadly because the movie begins after it's all over. Mastroianni runs into a stranger on a ship, and as the two men sit talking over their drinks, he tells the sad story of the great love that he won and lost. And then the story takes an even more tragic turn, a truly ironic turn that proves that you should really follow your heart wherever it may lead. Dark Eyes is a physically beautiful movie. It's splendid to look at, and Mastroianni gives his best performance in years as a man whose heart gives him the right advice if only he were strong enough to take it.
I like parts of the film. Obviously, I like the sequences involving Mastroianni and this woman that he is chasing. I think those things are quite beautiful, and I think he is superb in that performance. The stuff on the ship I thought was handled awkwardly and badly. I didn't think he looked right for some reason, whether it was makeup or not. It didn't make much sense to me. The movie sort of split in half. While he's on his journey with this woman, I thought it was erotic in the best sense of that word, beyond more sexuality.
Gene, you're missing the whole point of the movie. I mean, did you notice that on the ship 8 years had passed? Maybe that's why he looked differently.
He didn't look bad.
And the 8 years in between, horrible things had happened to him. He'd lost everything. He's down and out. You remember the ending of the movie?
Yes,
I don't want to give it away. So that's why he
yes.
looked bad. Now, the reason he looks bad is because of all these things that have happened. The movie's whole point is that it's a story told now about a loss in the past.
I understood
and
that.
then there's an irony in the present.
I understood that.
So that it has to be told from the shipboard
I'm just
scene.
telling.
If it were told chronologically, it would make any sense.
No, I'm telling you that the shipboard scenes, I think, are handled quite poorly. That's
Those
all I'm
wonder
saying.
for the story that he tells?
You know, I didn't like the way that it was handled on the scene.
What didn't you like about it? They're standing there talking to each other.
Yeah, but I think he looked bad, and I didn't think it was handled well.
Coming up next, our weekly home video segment featuring classic rock and roll movies, including a film about Buddy Holly that was bankrolled by Paul McCartney.
It's my tribute to Buddy, the real Buddy Holly story.
One of the big stories at the box office the past few months has been the success of a couple of movies about old-time rock and rollers. First this past summer came La Bamba, one of the year's biggest hits about Richie Valens. More recently, Chuck Berry, Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, a 60th birthday tribute to one of the true originators of rock and roll, Chuck Berry. Now on videotape for your home viewing are a couple of our suggestions if you want more vintage goodies. And my choice is Rock and Roll the Early Days, which makes it very clear with this documentary how white singers like Pat Boone made millions of dollars remaking the much better music of black singers such as Fats Domino.
You made me cry when you said goodbye, Saturday.
In spite of the growing acceptance of rhythm and blues, cover versions by performers like Pat Boone still dominate.
You're the one to blame.
In fact, many new fans thought that Pat Boone's music was rock and roll.
When you see it,
until they heard the original.
my tears feel like rain.
Rock and Roll the Early Days is a very good basic introduction to the period, particularly for those people under 30 who didn't live through it and have only heard about the attempts to ban that devil music. Here you will see and hear some of those badge and Bible-carrying nuts who unsuccessfully tried to step on every kid's blue suede shoes. I love those, some of that old documentary
Oh,
footage.
there's lots of good stuff in this movie. For example, Elvis Presley being interviewed over the phone by Hy Gardner, the Broadway columnist, and all of those early black performers, Little Richard and Fats Domino and Chuck Berry.
And all the sheriffs that want to stamp out the evil.
You mentioned it was on videotape. I saw it on video disc. The sound was terrific on laser disc. One of the other great creative forces in the early days of rock and roll was a young guitarist who wore horn-rimmed glasses and came from Lubbock, Texas. His name was Buddy Holly, and his life story was the subject of the Buddy Holly Story, a 1978 movie that won an Oscar nomination for Gary Busey. Now, Holly's life and music are the subject of another new movie, a fascinating video produced by Paul McCartney that is just now available around the country, a documentary called The Real Buddy Holly Story.
I love you, Peggy Sue, with my love so very true. Oh, Peggy, my Peggy Sue, well, I love you, gal. I want you, Peggy Sue.
The movie contains a great deal of rare documentary footage of Buddy Holly and also the fond memories of many of those who knew Buddy Holly right from the start, like J.I. Allison, the first drummer with Holly's band, the Crickets.
It sounded like this. Well, all I want is a party, y'all. Be with me when I'm feeling wild. Really not fade away, sound like this. Well, I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna be.
There's a lot of good music in the real Buddy Holly story, and also the impression you get after listening to all of these people that Buddy Holly was a special person, talented, bright, and very creative. In his brief career, he had a great influence on the way rock and roll developed, as Paul McCartney testifies in the film to the way the Beatles studied and stole from Buddy Holly.
We used to write songs like Buddy. The very first songs that John and I wrote, we used to sag off school and go to my house and sit down with guitars and...
If Buddy Holly had lived, there's no telling what he might have accomplished. There's a real sense of loss at the end of this film. The name of this new video is The Real Buddy Holly Story, and I do recommend it. I would also like to recommend the 1978 Buddy Holly Story with Gary Busey, which for some strange reason has not been in the video stores for the last 9 years, but now I understand that they've cleared the rights, and that Buddy Holly Story is going to come out on video probably in January or February, so you can put together a double feature that way.
So pick either one and you'll see a very good film, although I must say that this documentary is full of much more information than anything I've ever seen on Buddy Holly, and gets behind that image that we have of him as just the guy, the only rock and roller to wear those big, thick glasses. And, well, Elvis Costello more recently, but from the old days.
Where did Elvis Costello get it?
You got it from him.
He got his name from Presley and his glasses from Holly.
You
Now
got
let's
it.
take another look at the movies we reviewed this week. We disagreed on Fatal Beauty. Gene thought it was a bad retread of Whoopi Goldberg's earlier films, I liked her energy. 1 thumb up, 1 down. 2 thumbs up, though, for a real sleeper, The Hidden, about a cop from outer space. We disagreed on Cry Freedom, the South African story. Gene thought it was an effective drama. I thought it missed the whole point about South Africa. 1 thumb up, 1 down. And finally, another disagreement, this one about Dark Eyes. I love Marcello Mastroianni's big romantic tearjerker. Gene only liked the love story. 1 thumb up, 1 down.
Well, the one that we agree on the most is The Hidden of all films. I would hardly have predicted that. If you can handle a few little gross-out things, I think you're going to have a fabulous time.
And also,
with that.
I think Dark Eyes, especially for people who wonder why they don't make movies like that anymore. They still do.
And I think Cry Freedom tells the story that it wants to tell very well. That's it for this week. Next time, we'll be back with reviews of Hello Again, a romantic comedy featuring Shelley Long and Corbin Burnson, and Made in Heaven, a film that actually does take us and Kelly McGillis and Timothy Hutton to heaven. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Nestle Crunch. It's creamy milk chocolate and crispy crunchies. Chocolate is scrumptious when it crunches. That's why you'll love Nestle Crunch. AT&T long-distance gift certificates. The gift that lets people stay close to faraway family and friends. ZipGuard wood finish. Will not chip, crack, craze, or peel. And Zip Strip. Non-flammable paint remover. Redken Classics. Hair care products formulated to create beautiful, healthy hair. So effective, their formulas transcend time. Available exclusively at salons.